What is good? What is up? It's Jordan or Texans Thoughts, and we're back with another video. And we got a special guest, a familiar face. You better remember him because he's a good friend of mine, Zach Hicks. Zach, thank you for joining us today. How you doing?
Doing all right. I was doing better until I started reading some of the comments here. We got Jordan over Zach. We got a lot of things saying, you know, Jordan better than Zach and stuff. So I was doing a little better, but no, I always love coming on here and interacting with your guys, and it's cool seeing your YouTube channel kind of take off here, man. It's despite the Texans
Yeah.
team, you seem to be doing pretty good for yourself.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, last time we talked, I think it was in the off season. We talked about Lovie Smith, and so we've come a long way since then. Season now we're into week 6. Oh man, it's gone really fast. I mean, we're already past the quarter mark, so I'm very excited to get into the talk of the first matchup with the Texans and the Colts this year. And if you guys don't know Zach, I don't know what you're doing. I mean, he's basically, I always look up to him as someone that I want to model, and I think of him as like, basically the better version of me. Like if you like what I'm doing with film and covering the team and analysis in that way, you got to love what Zach's doing. He's doing it for the Colts and the Broncos. That's what I'm saying, man. He's just a better version of me. I mean, come on. 2 teams, Zach. And he's taken that Sports Illustrated bag too. So that's where you got to check out his work. I'll put all the links and stuff in the description. But how's that transition been for you, Zach, to Sports Illustrated and working and covering the Broncos as well?
Yeah, jumping over to Sports Illustrated, it was it's funny if you tell people, "Hey, I work for Sports Illustrated," they'll think, "Oh, it's the bigger site because I know that name."
Right.
Everyone knows the Sports Illustrated name, but honestly, it is a step down in a vacuum from SB Nation. It is.
Mm-hmm.
Like SB Nation gets way more views, is a bigger publication at this point. But I took that risk. I wanted to kind of separate from the Stampede Blue brand and kind of make my own thing going. Not fully. I wanted to, take that Sports Illustrated brand as well. It really does help with the connections and stuff.
Sure.
And it's been cool, man. Unfortunately, the Colts and Broncos aren't that great right now. Transition also is tough. Kind of, I've been covering the Colts for almost 4 years now, and having to look a little bit at the Broncos as well. It definitely is different, but sometimes it's interesting because you get to look at a different team and kind of get that. Like when I jump on podcasts like this, I have to look at these other teams and kind of see something completely different from what I've been watching for the last 4 years. So it's different. It's new. It's cool. But yeah, Sports Illustrated has been great. Love having that brand and being able to brag to people, I'm working with Sports Illustrated now. And to go to your point where you said that that I'm the better version of you, or not, man, like I always say that I don't recommend many people for things. I don't do that. Like my brother burned me at my day job once. I got him a job at my day job, and he left within like a week. So I learned my lesson. I don't recommend people for stuff, but I have recommended people to talk with you, and I've given you prospects numbers and stuff because I do trust you, and I do think you do a really, really good job. So I don't want to take all that and say I'm the better version of you or anything. I think you do an outstanding job, and you can even tell from the comments, man. You got a good following, and that's always the goal with all this stuff.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, no, I hear you exactly on that, on the Sports Illustrated point. I mean, when I started writing for them for the NFL Draft Bible, and I can tell my friends, like, hey, I'm writing for Sports Illustrated. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And they all think
you don't want to say like the Draft Bible or Horseshoe.
No.
Like technically I'm with Horseshoe Huddle and Mile High Huddle, but if anyone asks, I'm with Sports Illustrated. That's what it is.
That's what's in my Twitter bio. That's all that matters. Yep. That's what I put on the resume. Yep. But yeah, I appreciate the kind words as well. I think honestly, we're so similar in how we operate and how we think, and so I think we're just a great.
Matt, you don't have to pay me off here. It's okay. I'm still offended even with the money. No, I'm just kidding, Matt. No, I appreciate it. I was just kidding around. No worries.
Money Matt, we call him Money Matt in the building because this man will come in here and he'll drop $100 on the stream. So Money Matt, I know $5. I know you got more than that for Zach. Come on now. What you doing?
I'm not trying to bleed him out here. We're not trying to bleed him
out. Zach must be someone enjoying. Exactly. Zach is the best. Zach is the best. You guys know that by now. He does pay me all the time. All right. Enough with that. He be giving me his freaking paycheck, man. I don't know what he's doing. He needs an accountant. But let's get on to this without further ado. So, I mean, just basic preview stuff. You guys know what I've been doing recently. Having some other people on the channel. Had Lori Fitzpatrick on the channel earlier.
Great.
First
great.
week.
Lori's great.
She's so smart. She's so passionate. I love having her on. But
She runs
same
circles around me when it comes to I read her stuff all the time. I think she's awesome.
Yes. So I really want to do something where we get, you, Lori, and then someone from the Titans. I'm thinking like Justin Mello from the Draft Network. He's my
Justin's
guy
my
as
dude.
well.
That's my guy.
So I'm thinking we all have like this big round table talk about the AFC South. I think that'd be a really fun idea. You like that?
So it's just Justin dunking on all of us, basically, all of our 1-win or 0-win team.
Yeah, he can play the playoff card. We can't.
Yeah.
God damn it. But maybe we'll do that for draft season. That seems like a good time to do it. Yeah. But because by then the Titans, they'll be out in the second round again, like usual.
We'll all be out of the playoffs by then. We'll be on even playing field by then.
Exactly. Alrighty, let's do this. We'll start with matchups. We'll start with the Texans offense versus the Colts defense. By the numbers, it's interesting because the Texans, I'm not a big stats guy. I know Zach's not a huge stats guy either, but if there's one thing I'll look at, it's Football Outsiders metrics, that is DVOA. I think they do one of the best jobs in terms of actually explaining how they come to their grades. And so Houston, their offense, DVOA 30th. Rush offense 32nd, pass offense 24th. We're averaging 28 points per game, which ranks 27th in the NFL. And we know, as Texans fans, we know what this team wants to do, what our offensive philosophy is. It's run the ball, first, second down, third, fourth. If there was a fifth down, we'd be running it on fifth down too. We want to establish the run. And so you're looking over to the Colts numbers and their defensive DVOA. Overall, they're 23rd, so better than us, but still, bottom third of the league. Not good. And what's crazy is the splits here, Zach. The rush defense says y'all are second in the league, and pass defense is 30th. So we want to run the ball. You guys have a strong run defense. Talk to me about, how you guys have such a strong run defense. And if there's any potential, do you see any potential for the Texans to squeak through some holes there? Or do you think you're going to shut us down?
If you asked me the first couple weeks, because the Colts run defense did look kind of weak against, or I wouldn't say weak, I would say leaky against the Rams and the Seahawks to start the year, the first two games. But it kind of really turned around against the Titans. They held Derrick Henry to 4 yards a carry. That's great. If you can hold 4.0 yards a carry against Derrick Henry, I think you're having a very successful day. So Derrick Henry only 4 yards a carry. Then against the Dolphins, I think it was only 2 yards a carry. And then they broke the Ravens streak of 100-yard rushing that was about to break an NFL record. So the Colts run defense definitely has shored up. Grover Stewart is one of the best one-tech defensive tackles in the league. And then DeForest Buckner is obviously a great run defender. Darius Leonard is a great run defender. They like to get their corners and safeties involved. And, Kenny Moore is an outstanding tackler from the slot. Julian Blackmon, Kari Willis, if they're both healthy, it's a very good filling from the safety. So the Colts are a very, very good run defense, and they have been for the last 3 years. I think since 2018, when Eberflus came in, the only team that's been consistently better in run defense is the Buccaneers. Wow. The Colts have always been top 3 in yards per carry against. So if the Texans want to run on this defense, I just think you're going to be running into a brick wall. It's kind of like slamming your head into a brick wall, hoping that you can finally get a hole. It's you might break through every now and then, but for the most part, you're really, really not going to find that open space. Now, the pass defense is a different story. I think you said the numbers there, 30th in pass defense, completely different story than the run defense right now.
Yeah, and that's what we'll get into a little bit more in terms of the Colts defensive philosophy. Actually, right before I go into that, you mentioned a great line, jamming your head through a brick wall and hoping, you're going to get through. And I'm sure a lot of Texans fans share that same frustration with me, where Tim Kelly, offensive coordinator, this man has been calling run after run. And it's been in obvious scenarios too, where it's first down, you come out in heavy personnel. Like, we know you're running the ball. Like, we know the shtick of this team already. And we know that that's the identity of this team. So I wish they would go away from it a bit, but I understand why Kelly wants to run the ball so much.
Yeah.
Number one, this is the team's identity. They have to be a run first team. You're starting a rookie quarterback. You already have limited weapons in the pass game. You want to run these 2 and 3 tight end sets because that's to help the run game. And it's just not working.
Yeah. It's just especially now with your starting tackles are both out this week.
Exactly.
It's going to be tougher.
Laramie Tunsil, Marcus Cannon out, Jerron Christian, Charlie Heck in. And the line already didn't have great chemistry together. They didn't have a lot of continuity. They moved Titus Howard from right tackle to left guard, moved Max Sharping to left guard to right guard. So, and then they brought in 2 new starters in Justin Britt and Marcus Cannon. And so all of this shuffling of the line has led to a lot of execution issues. And so when people are blaming the play calling that, oh, they're running it so much, I'm like, a run call is a run call at the end of the day. Tim Kelly's not the one out there blocking. All right.
Yeah.
The O-line deserves some blame as well. And it sucks as a fan to say that, our players just aren't executing. You never want to hear that. You always want to put the blame on something else. Not that, oh, our players just aren't actually that good. But that's what I'm seeing in my opinion. So
it's always a compounded issue, and Ryan actually mentions my last article there about Eberflus, which I really do appreciate the read. It's awesome. But it's always a compounded thing. My main focal point in that article was, the Colts defense hasn't been good enough throughout these first games. Now, they've played really tough teams. They played the Seahawks with Russell Wilson. They played the Rams, the Titans, and the Ravens. You could honestly say 4 of those are top 10 offenses with Russell Wilson healthy. So it has been tough, but the defense still hasn't been good enough, and it's a compounded issue with the players, the front office not bringing in better players in the offseason, and then Matt Eberflus with some of the things he's done, like dropping defensive linemen back into coverage against Lamar Jackson, as Lamar Jackson's throwing for 450 yards and 4 touchdowns on Monday night. That's a big issue, and that's kind of the same way I would break down the Texans' run offense. I watched a couple games. I watched the Bills game especially, mainly just to kind of see ways that the Colts could mimic what that defense did to find success against Davis Mills, and one
similar
is
defenses, right?
Yeah,
similar.
Yeah. Leslie Frazier, cover 2 base defense, like he's very similar. And I was kind of looking at that, and the run game, it's just so disjointed. It's very predictable. And I do think that is more of an offense coordinator thing, where you have to be multiple with your running game when you don't have the players, but the players too, man. I mean, you don't really have the chemistry up front. You don't have guys winning their blocks, and you don't have running backs that can really create. I mean, I think it was David Johnson I watched for most of that game. He's just not the type of running back he used to be. Like, he's still a decent player, but he's not someone where if the O-line's not winning their block, he's going to make something happen. He's just not that.
Yeah, that's how I like to think about running backs, is a lot of the time it's, can you get what the offensive line blocks for you? And then can you add on extra that? So right now our offensive line can't even block much for our running backs. They're not giving them a whole lot. And then compounding that, like you said, like exactly like you said, there's compounding. There's so many multiple factors to this. The running backs themselves. I mean, Philip Lindsay, he was supposed to be one of our best signings this entire offseason. Everyone loved that signing, even non-Texans people. And he's looked a bit like a shell of himself, with not being able to make defenders miss at the first level, not being able to make those explosive runs, which made him so efficient and, a big play machine in Denver. But it's been a struggle to watch this run offense. And I think the most kind of irritating part of it to me is that our offensive line, they're built to, be like bruising, like mauling offensive line, run gap power stuff, run inside zone and just overpower you. Like, the average height of our starting 5 is 6'5" and like 6'8", and then their average weight is 322 pounds. This is a massive offensive line on average. And so they were built to, sacrifice a bit of athleticism to have that power and just push it down the middle, push the run game down the middle, and they are lacking that element too. So when you have an offensive line that lacks the power and lacks the athleticism, it's like, what are you supposed to call? Like you mentioned about the diversity about the run game and how there's lacking. They can't block outside zone. They can't block that inside zone. They can't block gap runs like duo. They can't block. They're okay at blocking power, but it's bad. I don't know what they can block. I wish I had an answer to it. But so that's all the compounding issues with this Texans run game. And Alpha for $5. Thank you, my guy. He says, wish I could stay the whole stream, but can't. Keep up the good work, Jordan. Much love, brother. And shout out to Beige, Ryan, Money, Matt. Appreciate you, Alpha. Have a good night, my guy. Whew. Oh my goodness. Y'all are the best. How do you find about that?
Seeing the feet picks or something is what it's saying there.
What?
Is that why he sends so much money your way? Because, like, Matt, if that's a thing, you can hit me up in my DMs. I'll definitely send you some feet pics if that's what it costs.
I wish. That would be something I would be very much open to doing. If people want to pay me on the internet, if anyone out there wants to see my feet, I mean, they're open for business. They are open. All right. We also got Zach. We'll just get it through the whole Sports Illustrated. Everyone, we'll hook them up. We got you guys.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. So we talked about the run game. I wish I could say I expected it to be better for the Texans, but I don't. I'm not going to sugarcoat nothing for y'all. Y'all know that by now. The pass game, that's where we could see, I guess, more success relatively. And like you said, like I said, the Colts are 30th in pass defense DVOA. And the Texans are coming off a game where Davis Mills looked like a completely different quarterback. And he would put up 200 yards in the first half against the Patriots defense, who is a top 5 defense in their own right. And then he showed a lot more than I anticipated out of college. And he even showed versus the Browns, the Panthers, and the Bills. And so before I get into my thoughts on how he might look versus the Colts, what are your thoughts on Davis Mills? You mentioned you saw the Bills game, and I'm sure you scouted him out of college. What are kind of your overall thoughts on him so far?
Yeah, I never was the one who was super enamored with Davis Mills coming out, but I did like him more than other prospects. Like I liked him better than like Kellen Mond and such in this past class. I thought there was something to work with there. He had a good arm. He threw with some anticipation. There were a lot of good flashes in college, even though he was mostly just more of a mobile or a stationary quarterback, not very mobile guy. So when the Texans took him, especially to sit behind Tyrod, I was like, okay, that's good. Like he can learn a little bit. At worst, you got a good backup, maybe a guy who could jump in and start every now and then. So I like the draft pick. Even in the third round, I thought that was fine. But obviously throwing him in as early as they have, that's not ideal. And he wasn't going to be ready for that. So those first couple games, you definitely saw that. I mean, the Browns game I thought was a really poor game for him. And the other game I watched was the Bills, and the Bills game was just a brutal way. And I mean, the Bills have the top defense in football, so it is tough. But yeah, going into this matchup with the Colts, as someone who, you guys rooting for the Texans, you should be excited about this matchup because there will be opportunities for Mills to at least get his completion percentage up, get some good yards. The thing with the Colts is, even though they are kind of getting shredded right now, it kind of goes back to what I said at the top. They've gone against Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, Ryan Tannehill, and Lamar Jackson. And a lot of that is Lamar Jackson from Monday night, where it was 450 yards and 4 touchdowns, 300 in the fourth quarter. And it was brutal. It was brutal. But I do think this Colts defense isn't as bad as the 30th ranked, even though they have real issues in their secondary. There was times in the last game, for instance, that they had their 6th and 7th corners playing out there. That it was just a lot of injuries. Xavier Rhodes has been banged up. Rocky Sin might not play this week, and he's been probably their best outside corner this season. Mm-hmm. But what the Colts are going to do, they're going to do what they've always done, which is they're going to sit back in that cover 2, cover 3. They're going to let Davis Mills attack underneath. And the goal is for the Colts offense to, able to put some scores together, so Davis Mills has to try to throw down the field. And when he throws down the field, that's when you're going to have all the zones are playing back there, and you can force him into some mistakes. But the biggest thing is just going to be for Davis Mills to complete those underneath passes and then have your skill position players actually make some things happen after the catch. Because we saw that in the games where the Colts are getting beat. It's Lamar Jackson dumping it down to a running back who's taking it from a 2-yard catch into a 10 to 15-yard catch, or dumping it down to Marquise Brown who's getting 15. The Colts are struggling a little bit with the tackles, but do the Texans have skill position players to make guys miss and get down the field? That's going to be the big thing.
Yeah, so it's interesting you mentioned that in terms of making guys miss, getting those big plays, and I think we hadn't seen that element out of the Texans offense ever since Davis Mills came in, right? Ever since he came in, it was all check downs, even just such a screen-heavy game plan. And I understand it a bit. He's a rookie quarterback. You don't want to throw him to the Wolves. You got to ease him into it. But this last game versus the Patriots, it seemed like Tim Kelly really allowed him to expand downfield. And they were running flea flickers. They had so many more play-action concepts. And one guy to name is Chris Moore, who's come out of nowhere. I mean, this was a random signing, and at least in my opinion. He played with the Ravens the year before, so David Culley, he knew him. He had that connection, and he was talked about as this great special team guy. He was on the practice squad, and now just got called up for the Patriots game. And we were all thinking, why are we calling this guy up? We just cut Anthony Miller to bring this guy up. I mean, Anthony Miller is supposed to be this great guy from the Bears, 2nd-round pick. He's supposed to have this reclamation, this turnaround with the Texans, and now it's all on Chris Moore. And Chris Moore showed out. Chris Moore had a great game, and he was the guy who, in preseason, Davis Mills had the most clear chemistry with him. And we saw that in 2 big plays one for a touchdown and one for a massive play downfield. So I think he's the guy. His speed, the fact that he's wearing Will Fuller's old number with 15, I don't know, maybe it's something about it that he can make these big plays. So I think that would be the guy for that. But going back to the initial point about Davis Mills and about the Colts defense and their pass defense, what I'm very conflicted as to how to think in terms of success on the pro side. Like you said, like it's a secondary that is banged up, it's injured. And there should be an advantage there for the Texans. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, Davis Mills has struggled versus defenses like the Colts, looking like the Bills as well. So there's similar defenses there. You know, they're going to play a lot of too high. They're going to play a lot of zone. They're going to sit back, like you said, try and fool you and try and put you into those check down scenarios. And he struggled big time reading that sort of stuff versus the Bills and also versus the Browns. The Browns are another big time zone team. And he struggled making those decisions. Now, where he's been great is versus man teams. We saw that versus the Patriots. And we saw that with how Tim Kelly operates his offense with a lot of rub routes. And it's easier for Davis Mills when he knows, okay, these two guys are supposed to rub. Whoever's open is open. Let me just get it out quickly. And he doesn't have to read as much. Whereas with zone, and the potential disguises, that's where I'm a little bit more worried. And so I don't know on Davis Mills. I'm not confident because he's had one great game versus the Patriots and one horrible aberration of a game that you just want to erase from everyone's memory. So I don't know what side of the spectrum this man is going to end up on. And so I don't know. I think it's going to be a little bit more to the better side, but I don't think he's going to have a replication of what he had versus the Patriots because some of those were a bit lucky in my opinion. I think there were a few throws, but overall, I think Mills in the passing game, I think what I'm thinking with this offense is they're probably going to put up 24, 27. Do you think that's something that range? We'll get to like official projections game predictions at the end, but do you think 24 to 27 is too much for the Texans to put up on the Colts side, or do you think that's a pretty realistic number?
For me, just kind of watching, the Colts defense has been a defense that's been pretty good over the Eberflus era that he's been here. From 2018 to 20, they've been pretty good, and they've been beaten up on by good offenses. So I do kind of circle this game as more of a bounce back game against a rookie quarterback. And one thing I've noticed too, like you said, Mills is kind of that one read quarterback right now, but a lot of rookies are. And that's why they struggle against zone. I mean, it's not even just him. We've seen it with Trevor Lawrence throwing all the picks he's throwing. We've seen it with Zach Wilson throwing all the picks he's throwing. These rookie quarterbacks come in and they see NFL disguises and NFL zones that they never saw in college or in the preseason. Like that, it's a completely different game. And I think Mills does struggle with that, even though he had a good game last week. So I do think this will be a good example of, Eberflus on obvious passing situations does a lot with simulated pressures. Obviously last week it was too much with the defensive lineman dropping back, but they were trying to do different things because of such a mobile quarterback. And in a normal situation, they'll simulate pressures. They'll bring, sometimes they'll bring 5, 6, 7. Other times they'll bring only 2 or 3. And it is tough for a rookie quarterback to notice that. So I do circle this more as like a bounce back game for the Colts defense. So 24-27, it may be a little high for me, but with the way this defense is playing right now, I wouldn't be shocked if they allowed 24-27. I'm not super pumped about the way the secondary has been playing, and the red zone defense hasn't been good. So if they do allow 24-27, I'm not shocked, but I would probably guess more around like 17-20 is where I would kind of put that.
Okay, I hear you. I think one of the reasons I think on the higher end maybe is because of, like you said, the issues in the secondary. And you've been doing a pretty much, I think it's weekly breakdown with John Hagler over there, breaking down the Colts plays in the secondary, because Hagler's a great secondary guy. And so I think the one thing I've noticed is that you basically calling the team out saying like, hey, I mean, where are all the positive plays? Like, we're just talking about all these breakdowns. Like, what is happening? Like, so who do you think has been like the main culprit for these breakdowns in the secondary?
Yeah, it's funny. It's tough when you're doing these breakdowns and it's all zone defense or mostly zone defense, because you're not going to have, unless it's a pick or great zone eyes, you're not going to have many positive plays, because it's hard to like circle this one play as like, oh, this was great just because he got to his zone depth or something like that. So it is kind of tough for the series that we're doing. But it's kind of a combination of things. Xavier Rhodes, I think, has been banged up and he looks a little slow compared to where he was last year. Kenny Moore has made some really great plays, but he's also had a little bit more bad plays than what he typically has. I still think he's been playing fine overall, and I still think he's their best corner on the team. But yeah, there's been a couple of lowlights for him. Rocky Sin's been great, but the last 2 weeks he's been out, and that definitely was obvious on Monday night against the Ravens that he was not playing. And I think the safety play has been up and down. Julian Blackmon I think has been fine. Kari Willis, people are going to say he's been awful because of the first week against the Seahawks. He gave up 2 touchdowns, but he was kind of put in bad situations against Tyler Lockett. So I don't know about that. But it's just kind of been accumulation of things, bad communication, bad play calls in certain situations, and then players just not making plays on the ball and not being football players. That's something that Hags would always say. That's kind of his quote is, you got to make that football play. At the end of the day, coaches are going to call their play, but you have to make the football play. And they're just not doing that right now. So I don't think these are like unfixable issues. But yeah, at the end of the day, they're just not getting it done. And Monday's game was a great representation of that.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that Ravens game first because 300 yards in the fourth quarter. I mean,
yeah, well, fourth quarter and overtime.
Okay.
It was it was actually like 350 or something like that, or 340. It was crazy.
That's got to be a historic number. I mean, that's insane. And so you mentioned there's issues in terms of execution and not making, just plays on the ball, football plays. And is there also, I feel like when I see 350 yards in essentially 2 quarters, like at that point, there's got to be some sort of adjustment that isn't being made. Would you agree with me on that? Or is it just...
It's tough, man, because Lamar Jackson is so good. Like, he is. And I'm not saying he's 450 yards a game good, but something that the Colts really overdid, and then the way that the Ravens were genius, this is why John Harbaugh is such a great coach, is they went out there and they were running hurry up the whole second half. So the Colts really couldn't adjust on the fly. All their adjustments had to be done on the sideline in between drives. But at that point, you just give up a touchdown, then you give up another touchdown. You have to go try to make a adjustment. So it's tough. Yeah. It's tough because there's no in between because the Ravens were just go, go, go. The issue, I think, from what I saw was they were trying so many different things to not really get after the passer. It was more of contain Lamar Jackson in the pocket. And then they were trying to take away everything deep outside of the one deep ball to Hollywood Brown. And that was because it was a 7-string corner that just got beat on a double move. It happens, everything else was to take away everything deep. And Lamar Jackson did a great job of, I'm just going to throw it in the flats and throw it in the underneath curls and underneath drag routes the entire game. And the Colts weren't doing a great job coming up and stopping that. So essentially what was happening was they were dropping into their zones. They were eyeing Lamar Jackson in case he was going to run. He was dumping it down to a running back or a slot receiver underneath, and they were getting 10 yards. And they was just steady 10, 15 yards down the field. And it turned into a very, dynamic passing game just because they were just eating this defense alive. But I don't think it was anything atrocious by the defense individually or anything. I just think it was a perfect mix of Lamar Jackson's really freaking hard to game plan for. He was in a kind of a rhythm. I mean, he played 86% of his passes. It's insane. For 450 yards, he 86%. Insane. But because of his threat of running, they were sitting back and eyeballing him instead of staying in their zones. And and Mark Andrews did a great job. They just said him great there. Mark Andrews did a great job of working on the Colts linebacker. So I just think it was kind of the perfect concoction of so many bad things for the Colts, so many good things for the Ravens. And man, that hurry up along with just attacking underneath just killed the Colts, and the Colts just didn't adjust well enough to it.
Interesting. Yeah. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, I mean, the Texans are going to put up 350 as well in between 2 quarters. Obviously, that's not what I'm thinking. But I think in the way that the Ravens did it, that's giving me a little bit more of hope. Like you mentioned, like the quick underneath stuff, the rhythm passing him and use some tempo to it. The Texans showed that a little bit, and that's when Davis Mills is at his best. When he can do the 2-minute drill, that was like his best flash early in his first start versus the Panthers. I remember they finally went up tempo. It was a 2-minute drill, and he was just in rhythm, taking what the defense has given him and not forcing anything. And that's when he's at his best. That's not when most quarterbacks are at their best. They're not forcing anything, but that's where Mills needs to have success. He needs to hit those layups first, needs to warm up, get in rhythm, and then he can go hit those occasional deep balls. And Tim Kelly's been pretty good at scheming those open for us. So, man, I'm a little confident in this Texans pass offense. And I probably shouldn't be. This is probably going to come all back to bite me. And Davis Mills is going to make me look like an idiot, but it is what it is on that one. So talk about the Texans offense versus the Colts defense. Let's move over to the other side of the ball. We'll do the stats again. Houston's defensive DVOA. This number surprised me when I saw it, but it's 15th in the league. I did not expect the Texans to have, an average defense. I really did, but it's been their past defense that has been carrying them. They're 9th overall in DVOA. The rush defense is 30th. Not too hot, and especially not a good sign against the team that we're going up against this week. We've been allowing 17.8 points per game. That can't be right. 29. That must be 19th. That must be ranked 19th. I don't know. But 17.8 points per game. In terms of the Colts offense,
just 17 points against per game?
Maybe I must have wrote down the wrong number.
So I'm like, dude, that would be like top 2 or 3 in the league, I think, right? And how, like, I'm not trying to say, but 17 points a game when you allowed 40 against the Bills?
I must have wrote down the wrong number.
It might be 20. Maybe it's 27.
Maybe it's 27.
But that seems a little high, too. I don't know. You might be right. I might just be.
No, it doesn't make any sense to me either.
Okay.
NFL team points per game. Oh, I was looking at points. That's what I was doing. Points against, right? Total scoring defense. Opponents points per game. Where are we? Okay, that's more like it. 27th. We're giving up 28 points per game. My bad on that one. I don't know.
I was like, because, when you showed that to me, I was like, man, 17 points against per game? Holy crap. I was like, we're going against like a juggernaut here on defense.
Okay, so they are not as good as I thought. That makes a lot more sense. In terms of pure numbers, having the Bills drop 41 on your head, I mean, god damn, that's not pretty. But I think the pass defensive DVOA, if I have that number right, I'm pretty sure I do. But if I don't, who knows at this point? It says we're 9th overall, and I believe
I can believe that.
Yeah, a big reason of that is because of the turnovers, and we are tied for. Let me put it back up on the screen. We are tied for, I believe it's like 6 or something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so we're like tied for 5th or 6th with 8 total turnovers. There are the Colts right there with 9. And it's the turnovers that have been really fueling this pass defense because we don't really have great personnel, I would say. But we've been really good in terms of capitalizing on mistakes, punching the ball out and forcing fumbles, stuff like that. We've got 5 interceptions and 3 fumbles on the year. So Lovie Smith has delivered on that promise. That's been his big philosophy when we hired him, got to force turnovers, and that's been the one thing that has really had success for us. But in terms of the Colts passing offense, you guys have seen a big change at quarterback with Carson Wentz. Talk to me about the offensive philosophy with Wentz and if that's changed at all or how it's really looked this year.
Yeah, it really is the same philosophy at offense. And, it's funny. We were all expecting Carson Wentz to come in and be this big play guy who is way more consistent underneath, doesn't take as many checkdowns, but he's going to chuck the ball every single play. That's what we were expecting. Yeah. Pretty much the inverse of Phillip Rivers from last year, where Phillip Rivers was everything underneath and he was going to kill you with 1,000 paper cuts. But Carson Wentz has kind of adapted to the Frank Reich offense, which has always been the same, which – you're going to have a low average depth of target in this offense, but you're going to get the ball to your guys with space to run, a lot of crossers, a lot of levels concepts, a lot of screen game, a lot of easy completions, but your guys are going to be able to make things happen. And the Ravens game, I know I keep bringing up the Ravens game, but the Colts threw for over 400 yards and ran for over 150 in that one. The offense was incredible against a very, very good, I wouldn't say great Ravens defense, but really well-coached, good unit that the Ravens have. Frank Reich, I think, is a really good play caller. He's had some inconsistencies with certain things, but he knows how to get guys open. He knows how to scheme those crossers. And I know this is Lovie Smith. It's a very different style that the Colts are seeing from the Texans, but he's always had a lot of success against the Texans with these things and scheming guys open. So, the passing game's gonna be lower on that DVOA than probably what it should be, just because these last couple of weeks Carson Wentz looked good, and honestly that Titans game Wentz was operating on like half of an ankle, so I do think he, that does skew it down a little bit, but I think he's been perfectly fine this year. It's not anything amazing or anything special. It's nothing like his 2017 year, but it's definitely nothing like his 2020 year. He's been very safe with the ball. I think he has one fumble and one interception this year, and that's it. It's been very conservative, and he's been, getting guys open and hitting open guys when they've been there. So I think he's been perfectly fine for this team, really kind of like a middling quarterback, and that's kind of what the Colts need, at least at the moment,
Yeah, so then really quickly, I like that breakdown, but really quickly, would you say he's been an upgrade or a downgrade over Phillip Rivers?
I would probably say slight downgrade. Phillip Rivers, I think, at least for me, someone who covered this team, I think Andrew Luck was a great quarterback, but Phillip Rivers is probably the smartest quarterback I've seen kind of up close and in person. I mean, there was a J.J. Watt story from last year where the Texans were about to bring a blitz, and Phillip Rivers, before the snap, called out one guy who was supposed to be blitzing for the Texans when he actually wasn't. And J.J. Watt said afterwards, yeah, he was actually supposed to be blitzing on that play too. like Phillip Rivers was correcting the mistake on the Texans. Just such a smart player, and honestly, he could look at a defense before the snap and say where he needs to go with the ball. Now, will his arm get the ball there? Right. That was always the question with Phillip Rivers. Smarts were there. The arm talent wasn't really there last year. But I think Carson Wentz doesn't have that mental ability, but he does have more of the physical ability. So there is more potential than what there was with the Rivers offense. But I would say a slight downgrade right now because that mental ability is just not there.
Okay. And that's so much of the game. I mean, so much of the quarterback game for sure. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Wentz, in terms of what he can do against the Texans, we know the Lovey Tampa 2. What's been interesting to me is that they've been switching it up a bit more. They've been playing a little bit more man. They've been playing a little bit more single high. But overall, the defense, they're gonna, whatever they show you pre-snap is what they're gonna play post-snap. And so that kind of leans towards y'all, because if Wentz isn't that kind of mental, genius, he needs to see what he needs to see pre-snap, and post-snap needs to be the same kind of for him to give that kind of advantage. You know what I mean? And so going up against that Texans matchup, it's going to be kind of in his favor a little bit. But so I think, with that being said, I think the Colts are going to move the ball pretty well. But what it's going to come down to, and I think you mentioned this earlier, is the red zone. That's where the Texans have really been able to kind of slow down teams. They did it to the what team was it?
Bills. I know the Bills. They had some success.
Yeah. The first half they held them to like 4 field goals, and I mean, they were letting them march down to that red zone with ease, but it was insane. And so I think if they can try and replicate that success for the Colts, that's definitely going to be a necessity to get that dub. But
the Colts do have the worst red zone offense in football right now, converting touchdowns on only 36% of their trips. So hopefully this is a good week for the Colts in that regard, but. I mean, against the Rams, they got stuffed at the 1-yard line twice and came away with 0 points when they had the ball at the 1-yard line. Last week, they had a fumble in the red zone. I think against the Seahawks, they got stuffed on 4 and out. They missed a field goal last week, too, in the red zone. So it's just been an atrocious red zone offense for the Colts. So I do think the Colts are going to move the ball with relative ease against this Texans defense, especially with the run game, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But I do think the red zone is going to be the key to this game.
For sure. I agree. Great to hear that they've been pretty horrible in that regard. Hopefully that can continue. But yes, we're going to get into the run game, and I think it all starts with the offensive line. And what is that configuration going to look like? Because I know you've been saying that you want to see Quentin Nelson potentially at left tackle, because Eric Fisher is just a pylon out there. I mean, what is he doing? But what is I know there's been so many injuries on your guys' team. It's been horrible to have to deal with, but what is the offensive line going to look like this week?
Yeah, so the offensive line, from what we can tell, it's going to be Eric Fisher at left tackle, who's been bad in pass block, but he's been a good run blocker. So I think, again, with never spends money, it's not Irsay that doesn't want to spend the money. It's not Irsay. It's a Chris Ballard philosophy.
Yeah.
It's definitely not Irsay, dude. If Irsay was with Grigson, he threw millions at Andre Johnson, the corpse of Andre Johnson, at Trent Cole, at all these guys that Grigson wanted. It's not Irsay. It's definitely all Chris Ballard. But getting to the offensive line, so Eric Fisher has been a good run blocker, really bad pass blocker. Chris Reed at left guard, who I think has just been phenomenal, filling in for Quentin Nelson. I would say, I mean, if you're looking at guards, probably a top 10 to 15 run blocking guard in the league. I I was so high on him watching him when the Colts signed him, and I have no clue how he was signed for nearly a vet minimum deal. And I know Panthers fans are talking the same now until they let him go. He's been phenomenal for the Colts in that regard. Ryan Kelly at center has had a rough year, but on Monday he looked like his Pro Bowl self. He looked really, really good. Mark Lewinsky had a really good game against the Ravens as well. And then at right tackle, it's been kind of all over the place with Braden Smith out. They did start Matt Pryor at right tackle this past week, and he looked very, very, very solid. So I think the Colts line is going to be fine. I do think there will be a lot of opportunity for your guy, Jacob Martin, on the edge in the pass game, because Eric Fisher and Matt Pryor are just not great pass blockers. But this offensive line is built to run the ball, and on Monday, man, they looked outstanding running the ball. Just very, very good. And honestly, the yards per carry would have been higher if Carson Wentz wasn't tearing the Ravens up in the pass game. So I do think the passing offense is going to be able to move the ball, and I think 30th ranked run defense that the Texans have. The Colts rush offense is definitely getting better and better each week. I do think that's going to be where the Colts can really win this game, is that rush offense with honestly three of the best, probably the best trio of running backs in the NFL when you're looking 1 through 3, because you got Jonathan Taylor, Naeem Hines, and then Marlon Mack. I mean, that's a very, very, very good trio. So, yeah, man, I think that's where the Colts are really going to get a lot of their yards against this Texans defense. We had a lot of running the ball, a lot of Jonathan Taylor, a lot of Naeem Hines in the pass game, and a lot of Marlon Mack kind of just subbing in.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Before I dive into that really quickly, you brought him up, so I had to mention it. But Jacob Martin, hopefully he can get on track. He's been getting the start recently, and he hasn't looked as hot as I like. But this is the week to do it for sure. Go up against Eric Fisher. Unfortunately, Julian Davenport, he's not playing. He's not starting for you guys anymore, because us Texans fans know how horrible he can be. So I was hoping
he was bad.
Match up with him.
He was rough.
Okay, so knock me him. Hopefully Martin can get it going. But in terms of the run defense. Yeah, it's not pretty. Rush defense is 30th in the NFL in terms of DVOA. And I wish there was a some sort of answer, some sort of glimmer of hope that I could say that, hey, this is the reason why they're going to turn it around. But there isn't.
And the Colts had success last year on this defense running the ball. I mean, Jonathan Taylor had 200-yard games, I believe, against this defense. So the Colts have had success in the past running on this personnel. I do love that Roy Lopez is mentioned there. I actually really liked Roy Lopez in this past class. I had one of my agent buddies hit me up and tell me, like, watch this Roy Lopez kid. He's actually like, he's good. I think, did he get drafted? Did you guys draft him?
Yeah, 6th round.
Okay. Yeah. Cause nobody was talking about him pre-draft. And I was like watching him and I was like, this kid's a draftable player. Like he definitely should make a roster. I'm glad he's playing well. And yeah, Jonathan Grenard, I talked to him down at the Senior Bowl a couple years ago. Really, really good dude.
Yeah, no. So in terms of the personnel, I like Roy Lopez. I liked him a lot. I didn't get the chance to watch him. Like you said, he wasn't very a big name at all.
Well, he was a transfer kid too, and he was like 23 or 24. He was like a little older transfer kid.
Yeah.
Nobody really had him on the radar, but the NFL did. The NFL liked him.
Yeah, and I see why, because going back and watching the film, I mean, the fundamentals for the run defense is good. I mean, low pad level, inside hands, the get off is pretty solid. Like, he's a pretty solid athlete for a nose tackle / one tech type of guy. And what's been really kind of surprising is his ability to get after the passer, because this guy is just a relentless dude. He's got heavy hands. He's just a nonstop motor, and he's not going to, have a super nice spin move or whatever, be super technical with it, but he's just physical, and he wants to out physical you all day long. And I think we need those guys in the trenches. So I definitely think he's one of the guys to, build off of as we are in this rebuild. Jonathan Grenard, he's had some good moments in terms of sacks and pressures. In terms of run defense, I think he can get better there. I think he can. And
I hate win rate, man. I hate win rate. Like, I do. I love analytics. I love quantifying stuff that I see, but I don't like win rate. I've seen how those guys talk about it too, because it's very subjective how they quantify the win, And I think that Brian Burke when he was talking about Aaron Donald as a run defender a couple of years, I think it was last year, is kind of where that win rate. And I was just like, I don't know if I can trust this stat. I just don't know. It's a struggle for me. I don't doubt that Grenard's been good, because I think it's kind of like Pro Football Focus grades, where it's going to be in the right ballpark. I think any quantifiable subjective stat is going to be in the right ballpark, but is it going to be correct? I don't know. It's tough for me. But one thing I did want to ask you, though, about the run defense, is the issue more of the defensive line, or is it more with the linebackers? Because I know in years past with watching the Texans defense when it came to run defense, I always thought the issue was more the linebackers. I just thought they were very easy to kick out if you got a lineman on them. And then if your running back was able to get to the second level, he was going to be able to get some big things happen. But is that still like the issue with the Texans defense?
Honestly, it's a bit of both. It's definitely a bit of both. I think the linebackers are a lot to blame in the sense that, like you said, they don't get off blocks well, and that's what kind of the Lovie Smith linebacker. That's what they give up.
We have the same here, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly, and so Christian Kirksey, Zach Cunningham, they rack up the tackles. Like if you box score stat and box score hunt, you're gonna think, oh, these guys had great games. They're having great seasons for us. But it's the average depth that they're making those tackles at, where it's a 5, 6, 7 yard gain at those times, and it's just cleanup tackles. Like not every tackle is as valuable. There's differing values for those tackles.
Same with the Colts. Exactly. With the Colts. I know exactly what you're talking. Except the Colts have a good run defense, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah,
and so that's part of the issue, is that they're not getting enough blocks. The tackles they are making are so far downfield, and then they're also missing some tackles. Like Cunningham, that's kind of been the story of his career since Vanderbilt. This man has in his 4th or 5th season, and he still doesn't know how to tackle low or wrap up. I mean, at that point, what can you do? He's gone through multiple coaching staffs. Like at that point, it's him. And so linebackers are definitely an issue. And I think the other issue is that this defensive line, they want to play fast. Like that's like the whole Tampa 2 Lovie philosophy, right? Play fast, get a field. And sometimes they almost do it too much. Like you have to know how to play fast and control it at the same time. And so sometimes they're overshooting their gaps and allowing the cutback lanes, and also the fact that they're a bit lighter defensive tackles. Like Roy Lopez is like 310, Malik Collins is like 290. Like these are light guys, and so they're gonna get pushed around by double teams as well. So I am not too confident in the Texans' run defense. I think it's been a multitude of issues in terms of personnel. And so the Colts, I wrote here.
The Colts are a very duo heavy run team. They mix in a lot of zone, they mix in a lot of gap, a lot of power as well. But their bread and butter, especially with Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor works so well off of duo. It's going to be getting those quick double teams up front, and then if you can get to linebacker, that's fine. But if not, you're going to have Jonathan Taylor one-on-one with a linebacker or one-on-one with a safety. And Jonathan Taylor is really good at making guys miss. Yeah. So their big point is winning up front at the point of attack. So if your guys are getting moved so easily with double teams and duo, you're going to get a lot of that from the Colts this week.
Yeah, man. And I wrote it here. I mean, my question to you is how to slow down Jonathan Taylor. And I don't think there really is an answer on this roster. I wish there was. I mean, in terms of run defense, at the end of the day, like so much of it just comes down to talent and effort. Like there's only so much scheming you can do for run defense. There's stuff you can do, don't get me wrong, but there's only so much you can do when the talent differential is there. And so with the Colts offensive line getting healthier, getting their stuff together, getting in that rhythm, it's going to be tough for me. And the other part of this that I wanted to ask is how to slow down possibly T.Y. Hilton, because Texans fans, I mean, this man is in our nightmares for years. I know all the jokes, he owns energy, whatever. But I know it's questionable that he's going to play. Do you know anything about that? Do you expect him to play, Zach?
I would guess no. I know it's something that we want to say just because it'd be fun to have him out there. But, he's still not even activated off of IR yet. They designate him to return, but he's still within his 21-day window of being activated. Now, they could activate him. I think they have it up until Saturday to activate him. Or I think it might be up until – I think it's up till 4 p.m. on Saturday to activate him for the Sunday game. I don't think he'll be active. I mean, his issue wasn't like a minor thing. It was a neck injury. Right. It's nothing that you really want to play with. But I will say the guy you really want to be worried about right now is Michael Pittman Jr. He's been very good for the Colts this year. And he's someone who I always thought, coming to the Colts, I was like, okay, good wide receiver 2. His ceiling's probably like a high-end wide receiver 2, like very, very solid player. But can he be the guy who can win one-on-one and can get open down the field? And we've seen this year. I mean, he's on pace for 1,200 yards receiving this year.
Wow.
If you guys watched the Monday night game, he had that huge catch where he went up over Anthony Averett and had a 40-yard touchdown. Looked good in the screen game, had a couple other catches, and he had a 100-yard game against the Titans as well. He's just been very, very good all around this year, and definitely their best overall wide receiver and pass target. So, yeah, T.Y. Hilton, I think, would be a big boost if he did play. But Michael Pittman Jr., he's the guy in this wide receiver room right now, even if T.Y. Hilton does play. So if you don't have a guy who can go up and get it with him, or can – the craziest thing about him is he's so good after the catch because he's so hard to bring down.
Right.
Very powerful guy. He's kind of like – I'm not going to say he's like A.J. Brown, but he's kind of like that with how tenacious he is when he runs after the catch. So, yeah, he's a tough player. I'm not saying he's, a bona fide wide receiver one yet, but he's having a very strong season. He's looking very good in a lot of regards right now. And it's definitely been a steady increase. The first 2 weeks it was kind of quiet for him. Mm-hmm. And then it started – or I think it was the first week it was very quiet, and then he's kind of been building since then. So he's becoming the guy in this offense right now.
Yeah, I mean, you see that with the target numbers. I mean, 12, and then 8 and 7. Like you said, he's heating up, and he seems to be Wentz's go-to guy for sure. So that's going to be a tough matchup for the Texans because their cornerbacks, they don't got size. I mean, Terrence Mitchell is probably our best one right now. He's like 5'11". He's physical. He's got some dog in him, and I like how you mentioned Pittman in terms of like his yak. Like he's not going to juke everyone out. He's not going to run.
He's going to run you over.
Like Tyreek Hill. Exactly. It's like a competitiveness. It's a toughness where he doesn't want to get brought down no matter what. And so he's going to keep those legs moving. So that's the thing on Pittman. And I think the Texans, they might struggle even more because they've been playing Desmond King at outside cornerback for whatever the reason. I mean, that's one of the biggest gripes I've had with Lovie Smith so far, and he only did it this past game, but it's pissed me off that much because Desmond King, everyone knows the story on him. He's a nickel corner. You play him in zone. Don't ask him to play man. Don't ask him to go up against these great athletes. Don't ask him to follow anybody around. Don't ask him to play on the outside, and it'll be great for you. But you go ask him to play outside, and especially if he has to match up against a 6'4", 223-pound Michael Pittman, that's going to be a mismatch waiting to happen. So hopefully they move him back into the slot, man, because that could get ugly quickly.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, the Colts, if they see a guy on the outside as their weakness, I mean, no, I appreciate the shout out, guys. I think that's Steven's podcast. Steven does a great job. But the Colts will attack if they see a guy is a mismatch. And we saw this on Monday. Anthony Averett, I thought was a good corner, but I guess the Colts completely disagreed with me because they went after him on the deep ball to Michael Pittman. Carson Wentz basically said, okay, we're going to throw this up to Michael Pittman because he's on Anthony Averett. Anytime they needed a first down, they went for it on a 4th and 11 on like the 35-yard line at the end of the first half. And what did they do? They threw a comeback to Michael Pittman against Anthony Averett. Anytime they had a 3rd and long, they were going at Averett with comeback routes with Paris Campbell. So, yeah, they went after him the entire game, was Anthony Averett. Didn't matter which receiver, Pittman, Pascal, Paris Campbell. So if they see that, if they see a guy who's playing outside when he's not supposed to be outside, or if they see a corner that can exploit, they're going to go after him, and they're going to go after him crazy. So, if that's something they see as a big matchup, that's what they're going to do.
For sure. Yeah, really quick, I want to say thank you to another Zach and to Steven on the No Horsing Around podcast. Appreciate you guys. As for on my side of it, my watchers, my viewers, I tweeted it out earlier today, so you can find on my Twitter the link to that. But I did another Colts preview with them. Great podcast themselves, so thank you guys. But yeah, getting to the whole matchups of the passing game there. I mean, it sucks because I think even if Desmond King isn't playing outside, his alternative is even worse because then we're playing Vernon Hargreaves on the outside. And Vernon Hargreaves, oh my God, you might as well just throw like an 8th grader out there, man.
I felt so good having him lower than most that year that he came out. I was like, I had him like a 3rd round grade, I think, which is probably too high now considering. But he went like 10th overall. Crazy high.
That was crazy. He was out of Florida, right? Yeah. I wasn't like big on scouting back then, but I did a little bit. I didn't really see it too much with him either. But
when you were in like middle school or something.
Exactly. That's when I was first getting into football. I would just see basically my extent of doing that draft coverage was basically just watching Mel Kiper talk about the pick on draft day once it's been made. And like, oh yeah, I'm watching this highlight. I know what I'm talking about. Totally.
Then when you get
yeah.
older, you realize like, no, it's Dan Brugler that I need to be watching. That's who it is. It's not Mel Kiper. It's Dan Brugler.
He's the man. He's the beast. He's the beast. Yeah. Thank you, Willboy P, for the $10. He says, appreciate your insight, Zach. What are your thoughts on Nico Collins? Let's hear it.
So I think he's been hurt this year, right? Yes, or has he played? Yes. Okay. Nico Collins, someone I really, really like this draft process. I actually, I do this series with the Colts where I do it's called Build a Ballard, where I kind of break down all the traits that hit the Chris Ballard mold. And wide receiver is one where he almost always goes for freaky, big, elite athletes. So Nico Collins was actually number one in the Colts thing. So I did a lot of scouting stuff on Nico Collins, a lot of breakdowns. Great athlete, can win vertical. The tape wasn't going to be as good as what it could have because of the quarterback situation at Michigan, but I think he showed a lot of good things in college. So, his role in the NFL, I think it can vary depending on what you need. I think he can be an underneath kind of big body guy who can win in traffic, but I think he can also be a vertical guy or maybe like a big slot type. So depending on where the Texans decide to develop him, I'm very excited for Nico Collins. I think you got to figure out that quarterback position. Davis Mills, is he the guy that you build around? This year will tell you guys a lot. Or, with the top pick, do you take a different quarterback? It's going to be tough, but Nico Collins, I'm excited for. I love the fit with the Texans and Tim Kelly. I really think that could be a good thing. It just depends on where they decide to develop him and see how far he comes along after a couple of years.
Definitely. Yeah, I love the pick as well. That was my favorite pick out of that draft class. I saw a little bit. I'm not a big player comp guy, but I feel like a little bit of Mike Williams in him, and I think you're seeing that type of archetype. If it hits, like if they hit their ceiling, Mike Williams is playing like a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL right now. It's crazy. Yeah. And so with Nico Collins, it's similar. He's a tall guy, but he's also deceptively fast. And so he can make those contested catches on the sideline, those jump balls. And I think what really impressed me the most is the jump that he took in route running. And especially that was seen not in his 21 tape because he opted out, but you saw it at the Senior Bowl. This guy was putting the moves on him. And so I think he can take that next step. And he, like Zach said, he can play a bunch of different roles for us. I like the big slot idea and getting him to run slot fades out of the slot. I think that would be a really good move for him. But hopefully he went back to practice, I believe, today. So I don't think he's going to play for the Colts game, but going forward, he's definitely going to be one of those building blocks on offense. And Davis Mills needs him back because and I'm sure you saw this too, is one of Davis Mills' most, efficient actions in college was throwing up that jump ball to Simi Fehoko. And so right now, went to the Cowboys. And so now he's missing that deep ball threat. I mean, you got 5'10" Cooks, you got Chris Conley's actually pretty tall, but he's not like that jump ball.
He's 6'3". Yeah. He's actually he's like the perfect Chris Ballard bull too. 6'3", freaky athlete, but he just never really developed in the NFL. He's never really hit it.
Yeah, so hopefully people are really hoping that Nico and Mills can build that chemistry and be the duo. I'm sold on Nico, not as sold on Mills, but hey, we'll get to see it like you said. And it's a perfect segue really to the last point in terms of the draft. Before we get into that, before we talk quickly some draft prospects, final game prediction. We talked offense, we talked defense, both sides of the ball. I'll start it off. I think the Texans are going to take the dub here, Zach. I hate to do it to you, but I think they're going to take the dub. I mean, it wouldn't be right for me to predict an L. It really wouldn't against the Colts. Fuck the Colts. But I think it's going to be 24-21. It's definitely going to be a very close game. Anything can happen. It's a divisional game. I think with the Texans' ability to kind of lock down a little bit in the red zone and the Colts not having that great of a red zone offense this year, I think that's really going to be a big deciding factor in this. And we're going to have to force Carson Wentz into some turnovers to get the offense a short field and for Davis Mills to capitalize on that because the run game is going to be horrible. And so a lot's going to be on Davis Mills' shoulders. So he's going to need those shorter fields to really put the ball into the end zone. So that's my prediction. 24-21 for the Texans. They get the dub. Let's go. Put it in the chat what y'all's prediction is. We already got one from Beige, 23-17, 21-17. Let's go. Angel, that's a big point of this, man. Hopefully, but it's Lovie Smith. He's not going to change, man. He's not going to change. All right, Zach, what's your prediction for us? Let us hear it.
Yeah, so coming into the year, the Colts had playoff hopes. They had maybe even higher than playoff hopes, which I thought maybe was a little egregious. But they did have high hopes when they made this trade for Carson Wentz, and this has not been the start that they expected. So even though they are coming off of kind of a heartbreaking loss on Monday, a game they should have won, I think they're going to come out swinging, and I think they, on paper, they're definitely the more talented team when it comes to this matchup. And I think this can be a good game for the Colts. So I'm actually thinking like 31-20 will be the Colts. And I think the last couple of years, the Colts have definitely outcoached the Texans offensively and defensively. The one thing that's always kind of held them back has been a certain quarterback that you guys had. Now you guys don't have that quarterback anymore. And the quarterback play is definitely a lot less than what it has been over the years. So I do think this is the game where the Colts, this is kind of a must-win game for the Colts. They're getting the easy part of their schedule. It's just like, no offense to you guys, but this is the easy part of their schedule. They played against the top teams to start. So they have to win these games or you have to get to the point where, maybe you're benching Carson Wentz to save that first-round pick. So I think this game will be a lot when it comes to the Colts. They got a bunch of these easy games. This will start it off right. And I think, this is the game where the Colts bounce back and they kind of show up like the team we at least somewhat expected before the year. And yeah, I'm more so talking about, like Kelly's been here for a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 years?
Yeah. And I think the defense has done a good job at getting to that certain quarterback and getting after this offense, but that quarterback just made a lot of plays. So I do think that is a big factor when it comes to this. Now, will Davis Mills come out and be Patriots Davis Mills, or will he be Bills Davis Mills, or somewhere in between? It'll be interesting. Or which Colts defense do we see? I think it's good. I think this will be a game where we learn a lot about both these teams. If the Colts are really going to be, anything to look forward to the rest of the year, because if they drop this one, you kind of have to get to the point where you're not going to make the playoffs this year. It's not happening.
Yeah.
And what were you saying?
I was going to say, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, the Texans, knowing that our expectations for the year aren't very high, and so some fans are saying, hey, just tank, just get the best pick possible. I'm kind of the thought that, tanking is just, it's not right to do that to the sport. I mean, you shouldn't intentionally lose.
Tanking is fan speak. It's not real. Tanking in football is not basketball. It is, because you can just throw out guys on 1-year deals who are terrible, and you can have that happen. Football, it's not real. You have guys who are playing a physical sport who are getting after it.
Exactly.
You really, really can't. You can't tank. It's not a sport for that, and especially because you can't just tell guys to go out there and lose. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. You can put players out there who aren't the greatest. I mean, the Texans, I think, have done a really good job considering the state of their roster at competing in games and even winning a game this year. But what the Texans are doing is probably the closest thing to a tank that you really can do in the NFL, and you're still going to be competitive and still win some games. Fans can say like, "Oh, I hope we lose so it gets a better pick." I think that's fine, but organizationally, if you're a front office, if you're a coach, if you're a quarterback, you can't say this because your life expectancy in the NFL is so short. You can't tell David Culley that we're tanking this year when the average head coach lasts 2 to 3 years in the NFL. You can't tell Davis Mills we're tanking this year when the average quarterback lasts a year in the NFL. Or front office, even though it's his first year, your life expectancy is not very long. There's no such thing as tanking from an organizational thing. There is tanking for fan speak and for fan minds and stuff like that, but it's not a thing in the NFL.
I love that point. That was great. You hit that right on the head, in my opinion. And I think that last point about the coaching staff, and like, imagine you're David Culley and you got to go out there and tell Davis Mills, hey, Davis, you just got to shit the bed today. All right.
Yeah,
I can't tell you
You're a
why.
third-round pick. Your life expectancy in the NFL is like 2 years. We need you to suck. Now, will we bring you back? Maybe not, but can you just help us out? Like, it's not a thing.
Right. Like, that's the thing. Is like, these guys are trying to make their livelihood, make money, put food on the table for their families. They're not going to listen to you when you say, hey, go miss that tackle next. But like, no, that's not how it works at all. So I think, like you said, the Texans are doing as best as you can in organic tank, in a way that, sign a bunch of these guys, play them like all these 1-year veterans that they didn't sign any stars or anything, and just kind of organically, whatever happens. and we've seen them be more competitive than we expected. Sorry,
so. We like. I like it. I like
the
it.
inner tank out of me is coming out. My bad.
Oh, I get it, dude. Honestly, as a fan or as a writer, like for the Colts when it was going to this offseason, like what do you do at quarterback? Yeah. My thought process was, either like don't trade a first round pick. And to go to this point here, so if the Colts miss the playoffs, Wentz has to play more than 75% of the snaps for the Colts to give up a first-round pick. Mm-hmm. So say Week 12 rolls around and the Colts are sitting at 3 wins, even if Carson Wentz is playing like a top-tier quarterback, if they're sitting at 3 wins, you have to bench him at that point because you have to save that first round. You can't give up a top 10 pick just for morale reasons or something. Like I get it, locker rooms are important, but if you're sitting at 3 wins come Week 12, you're 3-9. I think players are smart enough to know, like, hey, we're not making the playoffs, so we need to save this first round pick. I do think though, if they are, say they're at 6 wins come Week 12, you're not completely out of it. The Titans are probably going to be at like 8 wins by then, or 7 wins by then. That's where it gets tricky because you're probably going to have to play them the rest of the year, and you could give up a top 10, top 15 pick if it doesn't work. So it is a really tricky situation, but if it does derail, if they lose to the Texans this week and then lose to the Niners the week after that, then you get to the point where it's like, we got to consider benching him at some point this year because we can't give up a top 10 pick. You can't just give up a top 10 pick when you have a way out of it. Mm-hmm. Even though I just know like morale and people are going to say like chemistry and all that stuff. But you just can't, it would be a major organizational failure to not recognize, we can save a top 10 pick and get a bona fide star to help him going forward. Mm-hmm. You can't just give that up just for, what about his feelings? Like these guys are smarter than that. They know football. They know how the league works.
Yeah. So speaking of that, you guys are in definitely a unique situation where you kind of control your own destiny in that sense. And it's going to suck because the Texans they have a similar situation with Tyrod Taylor, and that's kind of the narrative around him is that because so much of his contract is incentive based and he gets a good amount of money per each game that he plays. I think it's over 7 games and he starts to make $1 million more each time. And so similar situation, not the same because the top 10 pick is insane. But I know where you guys are coming from, where you're kind of hoping, hey, maybe we gotta cut this guy, or not cut this guy, maybe we gotta bench this guy. Jacob Eason can come in, or whoever you guys backup will be. Or he's a P.
Yeah. Honestly, they don't even really need to hide it. I've had a lot of people saying the Eagles could go to the NFLPA or something if the Colts just bench him, but like all you have to do is come out and say, oh, it's performance based. Like the trade never said 75% unless he's injured. It said play 75% of the snaps. So you could just say it's performance based and bench him, even if he's playing like a top tier quarterback. There's nothing that the Eagles knew what they were getting in when they agreed to that condition. Mm-hmm. They knew it was likely to be like somewhere in like your best case, you get like the 15th overall pick or something. Yeah. Worst case, you're going to get the 32nd, which obviously was never going to happen. But you know what I mean? Like they expected a pick between the high teens and in the 20s, and they were happy taking that. That's why that condition was thrown in. So I've had a lot of people telling me like, oh, the Eagles will file a grievance or something. It's like, no, they won't. That's what the condition is for. It protects the Colts. But yeah, they definitely could do that, Ryan. I'm not saying that what you're saying is dumb or anything by any means. They could definitely throw that. And yeah, just give him the COVID. Yeah, he's unvaccinated, so yeah, he could definitely catch COVID. And that's a real possibility for this team down the stretch. Man. Well, that's a mess that is kind of like it's like the elephant in the room with the Colts. Uh-huh. Like we know that the Colts, if they do start winning on this easy part of their schedule, all of a sudden they could just get decimated by COVID, and then it wipes out everything.
Do they have low? What was interesting to me is that the Texans are one of the only teams that didn't report their vaccination rate. So I don't even know where we're at, but where are the Colts at? Were they at a low percentage or?
So the Colts, it was going up, but the issue is it's almost all their best players are unvaccinated. It's Carson Wentz, Quentin Nelson, Eric Fisher, Ryan Kelly, Darius Leonard. It was a bunch of them. It was insane. It was basically all the top players that you wouldn't want to miss. Are all unvaccinated.
because they have the security. Like those end of the roster guys, they can't let anything potentially hurt their chance of making this team. So, but the top guys, they got that guaranteed money. They can sit back. All right, I get COVID. I can pay my way through it. All right. So I mean, I shouldn't speak for them. But
yeah, I'm not even here to say that what's right or wrong about it. It's not the time. It's not the place for that. You guys have your own opinions, but it's just the fact of the NFL is if you're unvaccinated, life is harder for you. It's tougher. And when all your top players are unvaccinated, 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen are unvaccinated. So you could literally, if Quentin Nelson tests positive once he's back, you could literally lose 4 of your 5 due to close contact.
Jeez. That is rough. And
we're talking about O-line issues now. Wait until that. Then we'll be talking, Chris Reed will be their best offensive lineman.
Yeah, you guys have already had the biggest injury report in freaking NFL history that I've ever seen. Oh my God. Could you imagine if COVID hits? Oh,
yeah, man.
Insane. All right, we're going to wrap it up here really quickly before we get out of here. I don't want to hold you any longer, but 2022 NFL Draft. It's going to be an exciting time for the Texans. It might be an exciting time for the Colts as well, depending where that pick lands up. But most guys are projecting the Texans, and I would project the Texans to have a top 3, top 5 pick. I think that's pretty fair. Probably more so top 3. And so who are your favorite prospects in that range? I mean, it's not a great quarterback class. That's what everyone's going to say. I think it's a great defensive class in terms of some blue chip prospects up there. Give me your top names for that range.
Yeah, so you guys are kind of looking at everything, right? There's nothing really left tackle, probably not, but you could still take a right tackle up there. So it's tough, man. But I think Ryan actually said something earlier. He was like, he wants us to be talking draft every single week or something. Is what he said.
I love that.
Maybe we can do that in the off season. We could do a couple shows a week or a couple shows a month or something.
A couple shows a week. Goddamn.
A month is what I meant. But yeah, I think in that top tier range, the only quarterback I think the NFL is going to like up that high is Matt Corral out of Ole Miss. He was the highest rated quarterback coming into this year among NFL scouts. They very, very much liked him. He's had a really good year for Ole Miss. So I could definitely see him, especially because it's quarterback. He's going to get pushed up the draft board. Even if I don't view him as that, I know a lot of scouts really do like him. So he'll be up in that range depending if the Texans want to go quarterback. If they don't want to go quarterback, there are a couple of we demand more Zach. There are a couple good options up there. I think Evan Neal is going to be a very enticing pick. If you guys really want to shore up that offensive line, put him at right tackle, and your tackles are solved for the foreseeable future. So I think that's a very possible one. Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame, very, very, very good player. He can kind of do whatever you need him to do on defense. So rangy, so big, so physical. I think a guy who's sneaking up there, especially because I wouldn't say Thibodeau has hurt his stock this year. I think Thibodeau's been fine. But the guy who I think is going to be a top 10 pick, maybe even top 5 pick, is Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan. He's a guy where I watched going into this year and I was like, okay, good player, like first round guy for sure. Then he made Bruce Feldman's freaks list as like a top 5 player. And some of those numbers, I don't have them right now, but some of those numbers in that freaks list were insane for him. Like we're talking like if you're doing like RAS score, like we're talking like almost 10, like freaky, like at least 9.5, like above that though. Freaky numbers. Great athlete. And then the film this year has been outstanding. He made a potential first round offensive tackle in Jackson Kirkland look like a fool when he played against Washington. He's really got down that 2-hand swipe that the Bosa's have done over the years. Yeah, I think he's up there in the
Should
top.
be top. Yeah, there
he is, number 2, right behind Evan Neal, the other guy I mentioned.
Exactly.
But yeah, do you have the numbers there?
Okay, yeah. So Kwity Paye that you guys got, he already had a historic, I believe it was 3 cone at 6.37. Hutchinson timed at 6.54. That's insane, which would have been better than anyone at the 2020 Combine. He ripped off a 36-inch vert, so he's explosive. Ran a 4.64 40, and he's like a good he's not like an outside linebacker like build. Like, he's a defensive end. Like he's big guy. So I love that you brought up Aiden Hutchinson, and we'll look at Evan Neal,
yeah, right above. He's
bench press 407. Oh my goodness. He's
had some great film too. Great film.
Yeah, great film as well. And that's kind of what you want to look for when you're at the top of the draft is these freak athletes who have just the highest ceiling possible. Just get the best player available. That's what I'm thinking about. And so I love that you brought up Aiden Hutchinson. I think I'm still a Thibodeau guy. I think he's the number one defender. I think Aiden Hutchinson is better than Kyle Hamilton and Derek Stingley. And that's probably going to be a pretty hot take. Definitely Stingley.
I like Stingley, but there's something wrong with him at the catch point, I think. And then you got the injury too right now. The injury they have to deal with. But honestly, Stingley has the athleticism to be a top tier corner in the NFL. Like he is a freak with great size, but there's just something missing there. He's still going to be like cornerback 1 or 2 for me. I'm not saying he's bad. He'll be a top 10 player probably for me, but I just don't. I think Hutchinson, honestly, for me, I haven't watched a ton of film. I'm actually, I haven't really officially announced this, but I'm going to be working with the Kansas City Draft Guide guys, Matt Lane.
Oh my God, I've been seeing them. Yeah, they've been killing it.
Yeah. So I'm filling in for Craig this year, and I'll be watching defensive ends and offensive tackles. So obviously Neal is one of my top overall players, but I really do think that Hutchinson's going to be probably a top 5 grade for me. Like I think he's that good. He looks like a Bosa. He looks like a Bosa to me. Yes. I don't want to call him I don't want to call him another Bosa, but he just looks a lot like one. The number definitely doesn't help when it comes to that. But I really am expecting him to be a top 10, if not top 5 player in this class.
Oh man, I'm so glad we're gonna be pushing the Hutchinson hype train together, Zach. I'm so excited for it because he's a top 3, top 2 player for me. I think it's Thibodeau and it's Hamilton and it's Hutchinson for me. And Ryan says, I mean, you can put these guys in any really order that you want. I'm not going to be upset about it. And like you said, I think Hutchinson, like we started with the athleticism and how he's just a freak there. And he also pairs that with really good technique for a college guy. Like I think that's what's really held Thibodeau back a little bit is his technique is not on the level of Hutchinson. And Hutchinson has so many moves. And he's so refined with his moves. He's got counter moves. He's got a great snap plan and good counter moves to react off of that. So I really like him. I think if the Texans are on the clock and if Thibodeau's off the board, he's my guy. He's absolutely my guy. I think you want to build this defense, get your star pass rusher who's going to be a double-digit sack guy, and really build up that defense that has some pieces there, but they don't have that kind of leader who you can build around. So
cover 2 defense needs a pass rush.
Exactly.
If the Colts are the best evidence of that the last couple of weeks, the cover 2 defense needs a pass rush. You can't sit in zones and not get after the passer, or these quarterbacks are not going to make mistakes. They're just going to eat you up. Sure. So having a guy like Hutchinson, who I think can be a very, very good pass rusher in the NFL, would just be a great fit for that defense and something they really need.
Exactly. That's what they're lacking. You put him up with Roy Lopez, Jonathan Grenard, and you got a solid defensive line there that you can keep building off of. So I like that pick a lot as well, Zach. Thank you. We're going to probably wrap it up here. I think I'm very excited to talk again with you. We got to do some draft stuff during the season.
Stuff. And we also got another game, later in the season.
You'll be back. Don't forget.
I might be more pessimistic in that one or maybe more optimistic. We'll see. We'll see what happens with that one.
People love you. I mean, they absolutely love you. You're the best guest we've ever had, really. They love you. So thank you again for coming on. That's going to do it. I mean, you guys know I'll have Zach's stuff in the description. If you're not following him on Twitter already, I don't know what you're doing, but go check out his work there. Definitely going to be a big help during draft season with the KC Draft Guide guys. So I'm excited to see your work there, and we'll have to collab for sure on that. Alrighty.
Yeah.
Whew, that's going to do it for us. Appreciate everyone coming through the stream. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. Support your boys. And yeah, that's going to do it. Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you on game day.